Hi everyone, this is Ibrahim Shishawar, and this is a video I'm making on a segment of a program called Secular Talk, which is a YouTube daily political, social, extremely progressive, extremely liberal program and radio program as well, hosted by Kyle Kalinske, and I've been subscribed to it for I think a number of years now, and I've watched almost all its programs, and it's been extremely enlightening and extremely in-depth, and it breaks down the daily political issues that are going on in the US government in all of its branches, and the US political establishments. It is extremely, extremely enlightening. I would urge everyone to subscribe to it, and I have learned a lot from it myself. I believe in many things and many foundations of thought that Kyle has, and even though he's a self-proclaimed atheist, and I am a Shia Muslim, but our line of thought is very similar in our political beliefs. But there is a segment that he makes on Secular Talk about this US veteran that has come back from the Iraq War, and that he, as soon as he comes back, he starts on a mission and a campaign to undermine these American interventions, and talks about the fact that how the people, especially in the military, should protest against these interventions, and that the only reason the US is occupying these countries and going to so many wars is to feed the military-industrial complex and the big oil and energy cartels and other companies like this, for the sole benefit of the few at the cost of the deaths of many all around the world. And Kyle shows this, and all in all, he says that he believes that the soldier is on the right path. I forgot the soldier's name, but he has some disagreements with him and talks about them. And there are not much things to go in depth into, but the third one is this issue that I find extremely irritating, and it's kind of amazing that someone who's as intelligent as Kyle, who I look up to, truly look up to, is, I think, on the wrong track in this belief. And I've seen many programs like this, and that is the fact that what is the main motive and intention and the main drive of the US foreign policy in doing these things? What is it? Is it, as the US veteran has said, to feed the greed of the few richest of the rich in the American society, or no, is it their belief that what they're doing is truly right? And of course there may be some case scenarios where they have done the wrong thing, and it was for the sole benefit of those few, but all in all, put all together, the main drive and the main intention and the motive of the US government was, as Kyle puts it, is their role as the world police, which they have inherited from the British Empire. And these other issues are byproducts that, of course, when they go in, like to Iraq, on the belief that they're going to liberate it from a tyrant and a tyranny, and they're going to give democracy, and it's their responsibility, or where they bomb Libya, or where they do interventions in other countries, it's their responsibility as the policemen of the world. So of course, and then there are some, when they take over these countries, of course when they bomb these things, the gun manufacturing, the weapon manufacturing companies, of course, they make a profit, a lot of profit. Or when they take over these countries, the price of oil goes up, or anything else that happens in these scenarios. It's just, as Carl says, they're byproducts. Now, I'm going to show you the segment that he talks about this, and he's talked about this and his belief on this issue a number of times, but this is the first time that he goes into it in depth. And I watched it 4 or 5 times just to make sure that I have not misunderstood what he says, because I think there are some obvious contradictions in what he talks about in this issue. But I'll let you watch it, and then I'll come back with my thoughts on it. And it's not just Kyle that talks about this thing. I've seen many programs that talk about the fact that is the US a force for good, and these things, when the ones who are for or against this idea come into, or this notion come and talk about this, they don't go into the real depth of the issue. And I've seen many debates on these things, and it's amazing how they only touch the surface of the issue of what the US is really doing in the world and what role the US has in the world today. So I'll let you watch the clip, and then I'll come back and hopefully I'll give my opinion on it.
Yeah, that you call Iraq an occupation. No, the thing about U.S. foreign policy post-World War II that has made it so incredibly nefarious, in my opinion, is that we put a mask on old-school imperialism. Like, if you look at old-school British imperialism, they would just come in and be like, all right, son, move aside. Now we control everything here, and you must subjugate yourselves. But what the U.S. does is they put a mask over it. So we supposedly inherited post-World War II the British Empire's role of being the world police, something obviously we all collectively don't agree with here. But we made it so that we would prop up leaders from said place who believe in the United States and who will take financial backing from the United States and who will allow us to exploit natural resources and essentially have geopolitical control of these different regions without actually having to have an American named Dave Smith walk in and say, I now run your country. So they put a mask on the imperialism, and they made it so that it's not an occupation in the classic sense of the word. It's occupation 2.0. So that's my first disagreement. My second one is on the issue of the military-industrial complex, because he kept referencing there that, oh, we're fighting so these billionaires can get rich, and he kept going with that theme. So I think that it's not the cause. Like, the military-industrial complex is not the reason why we act the way that we act. It's just a byproduct which lets people rationalize this belief that we rightfully should be the world policeman and go around the world and impose our will on other people. And that's a distinction I think is very important, and I don't think progressives should overlook it, because I think you gain a lot more credibility when you present it like that. If you speak to people and you're just like, the only reason we did any of these wars was only for profit the entire time, well, that's, again, I don't think that's true, and that really paints everybody who was involved with this as if they really are, like, evil characters, like they really are in a smoke-filled back room, like, we will have Americans die so that we can make more money. No, it doesn't work like that. I think that they really believe that, no, we are doing the right thing when we go into Iraq and when we liberate them, and when we go here, then we go there. And then after the fact, they say, oh, and we also have these upsides of all these corporations make a shitload of money, and then we get to take all the natural resources from the place that we go into, and we get to build another base. And so it's a complex thing. It's not just a single myopic reason, like, we will go to war to get rich. No, it's just that they believe in the American imperialism role and the we are the police role, we should be doing everything we're doing role. They think they're noble, and that's a byproduct.
So you watched Kyle's arguments on this issue, and with the veteran whose name I remember is Mike Prisner, I think. And uh, he goes into this argument that it's not just it's not the fact that there's some captains of industry, as they're called, sitting, or the 1% of the 1%, or whatever you like to call them, are sitting in this smoke-filled room and they're saying, oh, we're going to kill everyone just so we can make a lot of profit. It's not this, it's the fact that they think that they are the world policemen, and his belief is that the US government is not a corrupt political system that is working for the benefit of the few. Now, what amazes me is when Kyle says these things is, first of all, in this very segment that he's made, he talks about the fact that the US has inherited the role of the world policeman from the British Empire. So the first question that I think arises is that, did the British Empire believe that their role as policemen of the world was also a role that was based on the fact, on the morality and belief that this is a just system and just an acceptable system that is going on all around the world, and everyone is better off in this system, and we need to be the force that keeps this system for the good of the whole world? Did the British believe in this thing, or did they know it was just solely for the profits that came with being the superpower and imperial power of the world? So now someone might say that, okay, that was the British were a corrupt policemen, but the Americans have taken on this role of the policeman of the world with a decency and a morality that is acceptable. It may be flawed, but it's an imperfect world, so it's an imperfect solution that we have in this situation, but it's the best case scenario that is possible. So if this is the case, first of all, then he talks about the fact that US, in this very segment, now you can watch it yourself, he talks about the fact that the US does not occupy countries in the classic sense. The US props up puppet governments in these countries and in these regions, and then supports them, and these undemocratic governments, they bend over backwards for the US and accept the US superiority and accept of becoming a part of the US hegemony in the world, and then they give in to the US special interests, and the US supports them all across the world. And there's a million examples to show. Well, not a million, but I think you can easily go into the hundreds, maybe, during, of course, a period of time, not today. So so when he says this, in the very nature of what Kyle is stating, that this is how the US works as an imperial country, imperial state, this, in its very nature, it has motivations for profits and for gains. No imperial power in the world was ever saying, no, I'm going to take over this country and conquer this country just for the sole benefit that it's better for them, for me to be there. That would be like this policeman, that would be like a corrupt policeman who is taking money for protection, who is destroying evidence that would maybe convict his friends, and taking bribes and things like this, and then saying that this is for the good of the community, and I'm not a corrupt policeman. This is my duty. This is my true duty. And so I think it's an obvious argument that there is, at least in what, first of all, in what Kyle says, he says that no, this is not the main motive. Even though he talks about that, yes, the US is an imperial power that props up these undemocratic governments, and these governments that do the bidding of the US and accept the superiority of the US and the leadership of the US in the world, And just to clear this up and go in depth in this issue, there isn't a single, just imagine this, and notice that I'm not saying the US is worse than any other government or anything else. I'm saying don't think that it's better than any other government. Don't think that it really believes in these things. And I'm going to get into the fact that why the US is much worse than many, if not all, countries and all powers in the world. So what we have here is, can anyone name a single tyrant or dictator in the world that is not willing to accept the leadership and give into of the US and give into the interests of the US government and the US top industrial powers and corporations, and not be supported by the US? Is there any case where the evil of the dictators and the governmental system of a country will be so much that the US will say, no, this is not acceptable, and no matter how much you accept and you give in to our interests, no, we're not going to accept this and we're not going to support you, and this is our red line. This level of evil and tyranny is our red line. No, there is no single, look at the cases in South America, look at the cases. The US supported apartheid till the last second, where there was so much pressure from the world community and the US itself on the government for it to step away from the support of apartheid. And you can go all across the hemispheres in the world. There is no case where any government was a dictatorial government or a totalitarian government and cracked down on its society, but accepted that the US interests and gave into them, and the US did not support them. Go into the Middle East, Far East Asia, Indonesia, any other country that you can think and case, and just have this mind project, just think of, like as I said, where is the red line that the US will say, okay, I'm not going to cross this. There is practically no red line. So this is another thing, and Noam Chomsky had this interview a few years ago where he talks about the war crimes of every single US president in the post-World War II era, and how they're war criminals, even though they're not convicted by the international courts. And he goes, and he doesn't even go into it. He just gives up He just gives example for every single president. And this is, or other factors that go. Do you know how many bombs that the Obama administration dropped in during their years, the years that he was president? How many drone strikes and bombs? I think it was 26,121 bombs. Yes, that's the number, 26,000. Divide that by the number of the days that this administration had in power, and see how many bombs per day it was. Do you know where I got this information? Kyle Klinsky, the Secular Talk host. He talks about this. This was the so-called liberal president that the US had, the peaceful, the winner. And do you know what the name of the segment was? The winner of the Nobel Peace Prize drops 26,121 bombs all across the world in his 8 years. So what's amazing for me is that Kyle sees this, knows this, sees this information, sees this data, and knows these things. He's the one that giving it to people like me, and he comes up with the solution that no, it's not the US. He sees the fact that, I mean, there's so many examples. No one knows what to go into. The U.S. I mean, some months ago, there was the Iraq CIA files were declassified, and it showed that the American government knew that the Iraqis were using chemical weapons against their own countrymen, and the Iranians. And you can Google search this, and it's been declassified. and there's some programs that talk about this, knew it was using it on its own civilians and the Iranian civilians, but still didn't do anything to stop them, knew it was using them, other than the fact that, this Donald Rumsfeld that was on the forefront of people who wanted to destroy and take down Saddam Hussein. Of course, the very famous picture of him shaking hands with Saddam Hussein and selling him infinite number of weapons and missiles and giving him intelligence service and help during the war. With an Iraq that was internationally condemned after the war, 2 or 3 years after, even though the war took 8 years, by the international community as being the one who is the one who attacked, illegally attacked Iran, and Iraq and Saddam were convicted by the UN international courts. There's numerous examples. There's the case of just imagine how corrupt the American system is. It's unbelievable. Sometimes I watch this and I had this talk with an American, and he said that go and look at your. Don't talk about the U.S. You live in a tyrannical community and society, and you talk about the U.S. And then I answered that yes, exactly. I live in a tyrannical community and society and a government. But what excuse do you have? You've let someone become president who openly talks about. Of course, I believe that Donald Trump does not. There is no thought that goes into any of the words and decisions that he makes. He doesn't. He's a stupid. I think that the future should talk about what this creature that took power in the U.S. was and how the U.S. got there. But that's for another day. But just a man who talks openly about torturing people, even if there is no. Even if it's been relieved that the torture doesn't give good results, it's torture for the sole purpose of torture. And I'm sure that there are many people in America that would like this thing. A man who talks about killing the families and wife and children of those who are the jihadists and the terrorists in his beliefs. The man who wants to destroy this, there was a law, I think I read about it, there was a law about saving the endangered species, and he wants to gut it out and make it almost a useless and completely useless law because of the changes that he's going to make to it. You see, there's the Paris Accords for the environmental rules and bringing down the increase in the world temperature, where everyone accepted the Paris Accords and except the Republican-ruled U.S. Congress, and that stopped the whole thing. And a few months ago, again, there was a meeting of the world leaders in Morocco, I think it was. Again, it came to no results because of the U.S. What about the U.S. Congressional, the Senate, U.S. Senate torture report? I mean, it was specifically named the torture report. And this was in the Obama administration a few months back, I think 3 or 4 months back maybe, that talked about what had happened in the U.S. prisons and the CIA special, dark secret prisons on Guantanamo, and it, of course, this report, it was called the torture report, and then Obama came and talked about it, and he said, yes, unfortunately, we tortured some folks. Do you know what that sounds? Torture is a war crime, and anyone who has anything to do with it is a war criminal. and should be indicted by the international courts. And he says, oh yes, we've tortured some folks. And then he went and classified it for at least, I think, 15 years. Yes, it was classified for the next 15 years. Whether it will be declassified in 15 years or not, we don't know. But this is your government. This is the government that you are the only industrial country in the world that doesn't have universal health care. Do you know how I know this? Kyle Kalinske. Of course I knew it, but Kyle brings it up in many conversations as well. What about the US educational system? And then you see all these, the craziest of the crazies and the 1% of the 1% of the 1% coming into the Trump administration. The fact that Trump won this election, and the fact that everybody knows, that there is not one, maybe a 1 in 100 of your representatives, whether they be in the Senate or the Congress or the judiciary or any other kind, or the governors, local legislations, everyone knows they are owned by the corporate overlords, and they do the bidding of those people. And you still think that the US government has any morality or decency to think as the world policeman? You saw what happened in the North Dakota Access Pipeline, how the government acted on these things. Not even Elizabeth Warren actually came out and spoke against what happened there. At the end, when it was over, she said some things. This is your government. This is what it does to its own people. And you want to believe that the US is some kind of a moral police that goes around the world and tries to do the right thing and think that this is just, and I'm going to do this for the protection, the safety, and the well-being of every other person on this planet, and this is what I'm going, this. Right now, they're bombing 7 different countries and have interventions in these things. Somalia, Yemen, 2 of the poorest countries. You know, why is the US attacking Somalia? Have you ever, one person in the media said, why the US attacking Somalia? Well, and just I wanted to say these things. I gave some examples that US guy, American guy that I was debating, and then I said, and you live in a country, this is the state of your country, where they openly destroy legislation and rule legislation, the good laws, and put into effect laws that are obviously bad for your country. And then you say that, what is your reaction? What is your reaction? You do nothing. You think that because you put, Trump is now in the power and you put on some protests against his prohibition of Muslims, and you go to and do some riots in the airport, and this is, so you're really liberal and you know what to do and you're fighting the system? No, your system is corrupt, and corrupt as anything. Even China, and this is the last part of what I was saying to him. He said, you live in a democracy, you live in a place where you can change, make a change. Yes, I live in a country that, first of all, there is this great blockade and filtering of information, but you don't have this problem. You have access to all the information that you need. You have access to those in power. But we don't have it in Iran, in other countries like this. Even though that is the case, our representatives, which are, of course, puppets of the main leaders of Iran, they don't dare pass any unjust laws. They pass the good laws. They just don't mind them and don't have anything to do with them. They just don't act on those laws. They do the opposite thing. They do what's in their own interest. But even in a totalitarian regimes like we have, they don't dare pass laws that what you have passed in your legislative branches in the US, which is democracy. And that's the terrifying thing about the US community and society. I mean, I give all these examples. attacking 7 different countries right now, all the bases that you have in the world. I mean, these are not even important. Just to ask yourself this. Talk about the Senate torture report. The fact that your president and all your they come and openly lie to you about attacking another country, about Iraq, and then you see and you find out that there's nothing in it. It's all lies. The very same people who supported this guy before. What did they change? Did Saddam change? No. The interests of the U.S. government changed, and that is the sole motive and the sole drive of the U.S. government and foreign policy. It's our profit. Those who are against us are terrorists, barbarians, and those who are with us are the international community, their democracies. So my question again is this, and all the other case scenarios that I put forward in this clip about how all the wrong things that the US government has done, all these political coups that they supported in every single country that they could prop up all these totalitarian dictators so they would do their bidding. And what I want to say is this, that almost every other government in the world is a corrupt and hateful government that will do whatever it can for its own interest and good and benefit if it has the power. And there is no red line for any other. They would do exactly the same tactics that the US would. But the US, even in today's world, those countries, even countries like Russia and China, which yes, there are, their rulers and their leadership are dictators in a sense. Even they've come to grips with the fact that, like, this is enough, enough is enough. We can't go on with this environmental, with the environmental dangers that are threatening our world. But the US, which are, and you have the greatest universities, you have the greatest accessibility to information as to how the world is in these situations and in these cases, and yet your government is the sole government that stops and blocks putting forward some laws that may slow down what is the greatest threat to the human race in today's world, as is an imminent threat. And this is, look at the case against the war in the Middle East. The war in the Middle East, I mean the Palestinian-Israeli war. Every single government in the world rules against the Israelis, one exception, the US, that vetoes it every time and stops any legal acting that may be done to prevent this massacre that is going on in Gaza and other places in the Middle East, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So this was, and I hope I've made myself clear, and I hope that something soon really moves and shifts in the US. Of course, there is a movement, there is a great change going on in the US, but it's far too slow for the state of the world, because if the US is the sole super industrial, military, economic, financial superpower of the world, and if it doesn't, if the people of the US and the US government doesn't change its policies, we have a very bleak and disastrous future, in the near future, I might say, for the whole world. And the people, the US citizens and the society in America needs to, especially the intellectuals and the youngsters, need to move quickly to stop what is happening. I mean, Kyle talks about the big money, and people like him talk about the big money and the fact that the corporate overlords and the the 1% of the 1% or whatever it is that they call them. These own all the politicians. Everyone knows this. This is legal bribery. I mean, no country, I don't know if any other countries in the world have this legal bribery. You can give whatever amount of money you want. There is no limit. The sky's the limit. Of course they're going to be indebted to those political sponsors that they have, and they're going to rule and pass laws that will benefit them. And of course, I know that there is a great shift in the American society right now. People like Kyle themselves have started these movements. I think it's called Justice Democrats, that they don't take money. It's like a Bernie Sanders, the movement that Bernie Sanders had, and that he said that we're not going to take any money from the big donors. These are good, but you need to move much faster, and you need to know the depth of the problem. The U.S. is probably the greatest, especially the Republicans. I mean, this is the greatest, as Noam Chomsky said, the greatest threat to human civilization. And talking about the Republican, and I would urge everyone to watch and read Noam Chomsky's work on these things, and I hope that I've made myself clear, and I've said it, that I'm not saying the US is the bad guy in the world. Everyone is all good, but the US has gone down this hole of this. They've unleashed. There are it's a no hold bar situation and scenario with the government. It says we should do anything and every single thing. There is no law, there is no international law, there is no international red line, there is no moral limitation to anything. Look at what will give me the sole interest and benefits of the political donors and the richest of the rich, the ones that own all the corporations in the U.S., anything that will benefit this circle, which at the end they will also benefit the politicians. We will do this thing without, no matter what the consequences are, to the U.S. and to the world. So I hope that we wake up from this. We in Iran need to understand what our government is like. People all around the world need to understand what it's like. But all in all, this was a thing that I've seen many times, and I have this other clip about. This is exactly the difference between, Sam Harris talks about, and his difference and his argument with Noam Chomsky on this. Says that, the intentions of the U.S. are morally and correct, and they're in the right. Their heart is in the right place, as then. And of course, and then I'm sure he puts some special marker. He puts some markers down where he says like that. Of course, I would say that the U.S. support for Pinochet in Chile is wrong, and I'm no apologist for the U.S. government. But all in all, it's acceptable that they have a high moral value and standard that they're abiding by when they do these interventions. And I would like to say, and I've seen many things like this where the people come, of course we've done something wrong, but nobody says we're perfect. And this is a stupid argument that everyone makes when they want to whitewash something. They say, no, we never said we're perfect. And no, not saying that you're perfect is different than being the corruptest and most self-destructive force in the world. So this was, as I said, think about this. There is no, is there any, I like this is better to this. Is there any dictator in the world that will say, will do as the U.S. orders it, and accept the superiority of the U.S. and being part of the U.S. hegemony, and giving into the interests of the U.S. government and corporations, is there any government that will do this thing and the U.S. will not support, no matter what the government does, in according to its own people, in the case of its own people, its neighbors, or any other thing? Think about this in the real sense, and then make up this great evil tyrant, the devil himself, the Satan himself, and put him on a seat in some country where there's oil, there's power, there's money, or even if there's nothing, there is nothing, absolutely nothing. The devil, Satan himself, that's how evil the guy is. With these, with the same policies, that yes, I will accept that the U.S. can do what they can put your military forces here, your companies can come and invest here. I know we will do these things and we will give them very low taxes and they can do whatever they want. But instead I will kill all my people and do whatever I want. I will be the great. I mean, the Satan himself. Do you think that the U.S. will say, no, I mean, this is Satan himself. I can't accept supporting Satan no matter how much profit it gives me. No, this is my red line. I think that it's obvious the U.S., there is no red line. There is no moral or decency in any act that the U.S. government does. They will support and do whatever is in their interest of the political parties themselves and of the corporate overlords. So, sorry to bother you, and Kyle, if you see this, I may be wrong. You know, there is one reason I think I may be wrong on this, and it's because Kyle disagrees with me, and I said I have the greatest respect, admiration for Kyle. So if you ever see this, say hi. I like to say hi, and I would really like to know your answer and your opinions on what I've said, and also anyone who's watched this, I would like to have your opinion, know your opinions on this as well. Sorry everybody, it took so long, and I know you're tired because I've talked too much, but it was really a heavy thing on my heart, and I hope I could express my views on it, so it was understandable, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.